The analog store. I found the store on a Tuesday afternoon in November, tucked between a vape shop and a boarded-up laundromat on the east side of Philadelphia. I'd lived in this neighborhood for 3 years and walked past that spot at least twice a week, but I'd never noticed it before. The storefront was narrow, almost squeezed, with a hand-painted sign above the door that read analog in faded letters. No tagline, no explanation, just that single word. The windows were obscured by yellowed paper taped from the inside, and a small open sign hung crookedly on the door. I wasn't planning to go in. I had groceries in my backpack getting heavier by the minute, and my apartment was still a 15-minute walk away. But something about that sign, analog, caught my attention and wouldn't let go. In a world where everything had become digital, streamlined, optimized, there was something almost defiant about that word. Something that promised a different kind of experience. The door chimed when I pushed it open, an actual physical bell attached to the frame. The sound was startling in its simplicity. No electronic beep, no digital tone, just the pure mechanical ring of metal on metal. Inside, the store was dimly lit by overhead bulbs that cast a warm, yellowish light. Shelves lined every wall, packed with items that seemed to have no organizing principle. Books next to typewriters, next to vinyl records, next to cameras, next to board games. Everything analog, everything physical, everything from a time before the internet had consumed our lives. "Can I help you find something?" The voice came from behind a counter at the back of the store. A woman, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She was reading a physical book, not a Kindle, not a tablet, but an actual hardcover book with pages. "I'm just browsing," I said, which was the truth. I had no idea what I was looking for or why I'd even come in. "Take your time," she said, returning to her book. "Everything here is designed to be experienced slowly. That's the point." I wandered through the narrow aisles, running my fingers along the spines of books, the smooth plastic of record sleeves, the cold metal of vintage cameras. It was like walking through a museum dedicated to the recent past, not ancient history, but the world as it existed 20 or 30 years ago, before smartphones and social media and the constant connectivity that had rewired our brains. I found myself drawn to a section of old cassette tapes. They were organized alphabetically by artist, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, in clear plastic cases that had yellowed with age. I picked one up at random, REM, Automatic for the People, released in 1992. I'd been born in 1995. This tape was older than me, a relic from a world I'd never known, where music came in physical form and you had to wait through songs you didn't like to get to the ones you did. "That's a good album," the woman said. I hadn't heard her approach. "Everybody Hurts, Night Swimming, Man on the Moon, beautiful songs, every one of them." "I've heard the songs," I said, "but I've never actually owned a cassette. Never owned anything physical, really, except vinyl that I bought more as decoration than to actually play." She smiled. "You're not alone. Most people your age haven't. That's why this place exists, to remind people what they're missing." "What are we missing?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Permanence," she said immediately. "Ownership, the feeling of holding something real in your hands. When you stream music, you don't own anything. You're renting access to data that exists somewhere in a server farm, and the moment you stop paying your subscription, it all disappears. But this," she tapped the cassette in my hand, "this is yours. Forever. Nobody can take it away. The company can't delete it from your library because of a licensing dispute. The algorithm can't decide you shouldn't have access to it anymore. It's physical, it's real, it's permanent." I looked down at the cassette, feeling its weight, its solidity. But I don't even own a cassette player. Aisle 3, halfway back, third shelf from the bottom. I've got 6 different models, all refurbished and guaranteed to work. $15 to $40 depending on features. I should have left then. I should have thanked her for her time, put the cassette back, and walked out. But instead, I found myself in aisle 3 looking at cassette players. They were beautiful in their simplicity, just buttons and a slot and a headphone jack. No touchscreens, no menus, no settings to configure. You put the tape in, pressed play, and music came out. That was it. That was the entire experience. I bought the REM cassette and a refurbished Sony Walkman that the woman promised would last another 20 years with basic care. Total cost, $32. Less than I spent on my Spotify subscription every month. I left the store with my purchases in a paper bag, feeling slightly ridiculous but also oddly excited. That night, after putting away my groceries, I sat on my couch and unwrapped the Walkman. It was heavier than I expected, substantial in a way my phone wasn't despite having infinitely more computing power. I loaded batteries, actual AA batteries, which I'd had to dig out of my kitchen junk drawer, and inserted the cassette. There was something satisfying about the mechanical click as it snapped into place. I put on the headphones and pressed play. The sound quality was worse than Spotify. There was a faint hiss beneath the music, the artifact of analog recording. But there was also a warmth to it, a fullness that I'd never noticed in digital music. And more than that, there was the experience itself. I couldn't skip songs. I couldn't check my phone while listening because the Walkman required my hands to hold it, to control it. I had to commit to the album as the artist had intended it, a complete work, a journey from beginning to end. I listened to the entire album, all 49 minutes of it, and for those 49 minutes, I wasn't checking social media or responding to emails or multitasking. I was just listening, present, focused, analog. I went back to the store the next day, and the day after that. Each time I found something new. A manual typewriter that required me to think before I typed because there was no delete key, no undo function. A film camera that limited me to 36 exposures per roll, making each photograph feel precious and considered. A collection of board games that required actual people in the same physical space, talking and laughing and interacting without the mediation of screens. The woman, her name was Margaret, I learned seemed pleased by my repeated visits. "You're catching on," she said as I examined an old rotary phone. "You're starting to understand what we've lost in the race toward digital everything." "I'm starting to understand that there's something addictive about having limits," I said. "When everything is infinite and instant, nothing feels special anymore. But when you only have 36 photos on a roll of film, suddenly each one matters." "Exactly," Margaret said. "Constraints breed creativity. They also breed appreciation. When you had to save up for a month to buy an album, you listened to it completely. You didn't just sample the first 30 seconds of each song and move on. You gave it time, gave it attention, discovered depths you would have missed otherwise." I bought the rotary phone. I had no idea how I'd even connect it. My apartment had internet but no landline. But I didn't care. There was something about the weight of it, the satisfying mechanical action of the dial, the way it forced you to know phone numbers instead of just tapping names in a contacts list. Over the next few weeks, my apartment slowly transformed. The Walkman led to a cassette collection. The typewriter led to stacks of typed pages, stories and journal entries and letters to friends who were confused but touched to receive actual mail. The film camera led to developing my own photos in my bathroom, which I'd converted into a makeshift darkroom. Everything analog. everything physical, everything requiring time and attention and presence. My friends thought I was having some kind of quarter-life crisis. "Why would you make your life harder?" my roommate Derek asked, watching me hunt and peck on the typewriter when I had a perfectly good laptop sitting right there. "What's the point?" "The point is that it makes me think," I said. "When I type on a computer, my fingers move faster than my brain. I write garbage and fix it later. But on this," I tapped the typewriter, "I have to compose the sentence in my head before I type it. Because if I make a mistake, I have to start the whole page over. It forces me to be better." "Or it just wastes your time," Derek said. "Time you could spend writing more, writing faster." "More and faster doesn't mean better," I replied. But I could see he didn't get it. How could he? We'd grown up in a world that valued speed and quantity above everything else. The idea that slowness could be valuable, that limitations could be freeing, was completely foreign to him. But I was starting to understand it, and I was starting to change because of it. I was sleeping better because I'd stopped using my phone in bed, reading physical books instead. I was more creative because the constraints of analog tools forced me to think differently. I was more present in conversations because I wasn't constantly checking notifications. My life was slower, yes, but it was also richer, fuller, more real. I told Margaret about these changes one afternoon while browsing her collection of antique radios. She smiled but didn't seem surprised. "People think the digital revolution made life better," she said. And in some ways it did. Access to information, connection across distances, efficiency in countless tasks. But we also lost things. We lost patience. We lost the ability to focus. We lost the satisfaction that comes from mastering something difficult. And most importantly, we lost the sense that anything we create or own is truly ours. "What do you mean?" I asked. "When you write something on your computer, where is it really?" Margaret said. "On a hard drive that could fail. In the cloud, which means on someone else's server, subject to their terms of service and their ability to stay in business. Your photos, your music, your writing, none of it is truly permanent. It's all dependent on technology that becomes obsolete, companies that go bankrupt, file formats that become unreadable. But that," she pointed to my typewriter-written pages, "that will be readable in 100 years, 500 years. As long as paper and ink exist, your words exist. That's permanence. That's legacy." I thought about my digital life. Thousands of photos on my phone, most of which I'd never look at again. Hundreds of documents in the cloud that I'd never organized or backed up properly. A decade of social media posts that existed at the mercy of corporations who could delete them at any time for any reason. None of it felt real. None of it felt mine. It was all just data, ephemeral and fragile despite being backed up and saved. "I want to go fully analog," I said suddenly. "No smartphone, no computer except for work, no streaming services or social media or any of it, just real things, physical things, things I can hold and own and keep." Margaret studied me for a long moment. "That's a big step," she said carefully. "And I'll be honest with you, it's not always better. There are things the digital world does well. Convenience, access, connection with people far away. You'll lose those things if you go fully analog." "But I'll gain other things," I said. "Right, presence, focus, ownership, a life that feels more real." "Maybe," Margaret said. "Or maybe you'll just feel isolated and frustrated. There's a reason most people choose convenience over philosophy. It makes life easier." "I don't want easier," I said. "I want meaningful." She smiled then, a sad smile that suggested she'd heard similar declarations before. "All right," she said. "But let me give you some advice. Don't go cold turkey. Don't throw away your smartphone and cut yourself off completely. That's how you end up giving up after a week and feeling like a failure. Instead, use both worlds. Keep your phone for emergencies and necessary communication, but make analog your default. Write letters, but also send emails when speed matters. Listen to cassettes, but also acknowledge that sometimes you need access to a specific song right now. Balance, that's the key. I thought about it. She was right, of course. Going completely analog in 2024 wasn't just impractical, it was nearly impossible. Work required email and digital communication. My family lived across the country and expected video calls. My bank, my doctor, my landlord, everything ran through digital systems. Okay, I said. Balance, I can do balance. I started spending more time in the store after that, not just to buy things, but to talk with Margaret. She'd run the store for 30 years. She told me, since 1994, right as the digital revolution was beginning. She'd watched the world change around her, watched physical media die and resurrect and die again. The store had survived because there were always people like me, people who felt something was missing in the digital world, who craved the tactile satisfaction of analog technology. "You're not the first person to go through this," she said one afternoon. "This realization that digital life isn't enough, I see it in cycles. Every few years, a new group discovers vinyl or film photography or typewriters, thinking they've found something revolutionary. And they have, in a way. But it's not new. It's old. It's what we lost, and we keep having to rediscover it because we keep forgetting its value." "Why do we forget?" I asked. "Because digital is seductive," Margaret said. "It's easy. It's instant. It removes all friction from life. And friction feels bad in the moment, even when it serves a purpose. The effort of putting a record on a turntable feels like wasted time when you could just tell Alexa to play music. The patience required to wait for photos to develop feels ridiculous when your phone can show you the image instantly. We optimize away everything that requires effort, and then we wonder why nothing feels satisfying anymore. I thought about that a lot in the following weeks. The friction, the effort, the way analog technology made me work for things that digital technology gave me for free. And I realized that the work was the point. The satisfaction I felt when I typed a perfect page on the typewriter without errors came from the effort required. The joy I felt when a photograph I'd shot on film came out beautifully came from knowing I only had one chance to capture that moment. The pleasure of listening to a complete album came from the commitment required to sit through it without distractions. Remove the effort, remove the friction, and you remove the satisfaction. That was the secret nobody talked about in the digital age. We'd made everything effortless, and in doing so, we'd made nothing meaningful. My apartment continued to transform. I bought a record player and started a vinyl collection. I found an old ham radio and got licensed to operate it, discovering a whole community of people who still valued voice communication over text. I replaced my digital alarm clock with a wind-up mechanical one that ticked softly through the night. Everything I could make analog, I did. And my life changed, slowly but undeniably. I slept better, thought more clearly, created more and consumed less. The constant anxiety I'd felt for years, the FOMO, the need to check my phone every few minutes, the sense that I was always missing something important faded, because I wasn't plugged into the infinite stream of information anymore. I was present. Here, now, analog. Derek noticed the change. "You seem calmer," he said one evening, "less stressed." "I am," I said. "Turns out disconnecting from everything is actually pretty relaxing." "But don't you feel like you're missing out?" he asked. Like, I saw this incredible video today and I wanted to send it to you, but you weren't on Instagram anymore. And there's this group chat where everyone's making plans, but you never respond because you're not checking your phone. Doesn't that bother you? Not really, I said. If something's important, people find me. They call, they text, they come by. And if it's not important enough for someone to make that effort, then maybe I'm not actually missing out. He shook his head. I don't get it, but you do seem happier, so I guess it's working for you. It was working for me, better than I'd expected. I was writing more real writing on the typewriter, things I actually cared about instead of endless social media posts that disappeared into the void. I was taking better photos because each one required thought and intention. I was having better conversations because I was actually present for them, not half distracted by my phone. And I was collecting things, real things, physical objects that I owned completely. Books lined my shelves. Records filled a cabinet. Camera equipment occupied a corner of my room. It was clutter, yes. It took up space. But it was mine in a way my digital collection never had been. I could see it, touch it, know it would still be there tomorrow and next year and 20 years from now. Margaret noticed the change in me too. You're converting, she said with a smile, becoming a true believer. Is that what I am? I asked. A believer. In analog, in physical media, in the idea that the old ways have value. Yes, you're a believer. And now you'll spend the rest of your life trying to convince other people, just like I have. Is that what you've been doing? I asked. Trying to convert people. Not trying, Margaret said. Just showing them what's available, offering an alternative. Some people get it immediately, others never do. That's fine. The digital world works for a lot of people. But for those of us who need something more, something real, the store is here. I was about to respond when I noticed something. The walls, the shelves, they seemed thinner, like the store was somehow smaller than it had been when I first entered weeks ago. Margaret, I said slowly, has the store changed? It feels different. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around with an expression I couldn't quite read. It changes for everyone, she said finally. The store shows people what they need to see. For some, it's enormous, overwhelming, full of possibilities. For others, it's intimate, curated, exactly what they were looking for. And for those who have learned what they needed to learn. She trailed off. What? I prompted. What happens to them? They stop seeing the store, Margaret said. They walk past it every day and never notice it's there, because they don't need it anymore. They've internalized the lesson. They've become analog. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you saying this store isn't real? That it's some kind of, what? Hallucination, magic? I'm saying the store is exactly as real as you need it to be, Margaret said. And when you don't need it anymore, it won't be here. For you. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. But other people see it. It exists. It's a physical location. Is it? Margaret asked. Have you ever seen another customer here? In all the times you visited, have you ever encountered anyone else? I thought back. Every visit, the store had been empty except for Margaret. Always just the two of us, surrounded by analog treasures. I assumed you didn't get much business, that you were barely staying afloat. This store has been exactly as busy as it needs to be for 30 years, Margaret said. It's always here for the people who need it and invisible to everyone else. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. I should have been frightened, should have run out and never come back. But instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. Because it didn't matter if the store was magic or psychology or some glitch in reality. What mattered was that it had changed my life, given me something I'd been missing without knowing I needed it. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Do I stop coming here? Do I forget this place exists?" "That's up to you," Margaret said. "Some people keep coming back even after they've learned everything. They come because the store is a reminder, a physical anchor in a digital world. Others leave and never return, and that's fine too. The store served its purpose. There's no right or wrong choice." I left that day with a portable record player under my arm, my latest purchase, and a head full of questions. Was the store real? Was Margaret real? Did it matter? I walked the same streets I'd walked hundreds of times before, looking for other anachronistic stores, other pockets of analog resistance in the digital world. But I found nothing. Just the usual mix of vape shops and coffee chains and cell phone stores. I went back the next week, and the store was there, still narrow and dim and packed with treasures. Margaret was behind the counter, reading her book, and she looked up with that familiar smile when I entered. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come back," she said. "I thought about it," I admitted. "But I realized something. Even if this place isn't real in the traditional sense, it's real to me. It exists. It matters. And I don't want to lose that." "Then you won't," Margaret said. "As long as you remember what you learned here, that physical things have value, that slowness has purpose, that effort breeds satisfaction, the store will be here when you need it." I've been going back for 6 months now, not as often as I did at first, once a week instead of once a day, but regularly, consistently. The store is my anchor in a world that's constantly trying to digitize everything, to optimize away all friction and effort. It reminds me why I chose this path, why I write on a typewriter and listen to cassettes and take photos on film. And slowly, I'm noticing others. People carrying vinyl records on the subway, someone typing on a vintage laptop at a coffee shop, a woman in my building who asked if I knew where she could get film developed because all the 1-hour photo places had closed. There are more of us than I thought. More people who have realized that digital isn't always better, that analog has value, that the old ways are worth preserving. I don't know if they've all been to Margaret's store. I don't ask, but I recognize something in their eyes, a satisfaction, a groundedness, a presence that most people lack. They've learned the same lesson I did. They've become analog. Yesterday, I walked past the store and didn't see it. The space between the vape shop and the boarded-up laundromat was just empty. A brick wall with no door, no windows, no sign. I stood there for 10 minutes, staring at the place where the store should have been, feeling my heart race. Had I graduated? Had I learned everything I needed to learn? Or had I somehow failed, lost access to the one place that understood what I was trying to do? I pulled out my phone. Yes, I still carry it, still use it when necessary, and I almost called someone to ask if they remembered the store. But I stopped myself, because I realized it doesn't matter if the store is there or not. The lessons remain. The collection remains. The life I've built around analog technology remains. The store was never about the place. It was about the transformation, and that transformation is complete. I walked home, past my usual route, and found myself on a different street. And there, tucked between a bookstore and a coffee shop, was a narrow storefront with a hand-painted sign, Analog. The same store, different location, or maybe a different store entirely, or maybe proof that Margaret was right. The store shows people what they need to see, appears where it needs to appear, exists for those who need it. I didn't go in, not yet, but I took a photo on my film camera naturally, and I smiled. The store is still there, still waiting, still offering an alternative to anyone who's willing to slow down, embrace effort, and rediscover what we've lost. All you have to do is walk inside.